Novus, the new voice. Vox Novus, the new dimension. Vox Novus, thought and movement leaders who will share from their experience and offer tools to help us navigate our rapidly changing world. My name is Victor Fuhrman. Welcome to Vox Novus, the new voice. Friends and regular listeners to my podcasts are aware of the experiences I had as a child in the 1950s and 60s. With my earliest conscious memory at age 5, I attended what I later called night school, visits with extraterrestrial beings who imparted knowledge that I had no other source for. I regarded these experiences as friendly, even familial in nature, rather than what others have called abduction. While volunteering for the recent New Life Virtual Expo, I met a woman who had remarkably similar experiences only a little later in life. My guest this week on Vox Novus, Debbie Solaris, is an ET contactee, interdimensional traveler, and galactic historian. After a fateful extraterrestrial contact experience a few years ago, Debbie awakened to her true star lineage and higher calling. Through her ancestral connection with the Akashic records, she's been receiving downloads of galactic historical information and universal spiritual knowledge ever since. She feels that it's a big part of her mission while here on Earth to help awaken others to their own true divine selves and cosmic origins. Debbie was recently featured on the Beyond Belief show with George Noory on Gaia TV, which showcased her extraterrestrial contact experiences and how that led her to her higher mission of helping us all remember and reconnect with our cosmic star heritage. Debbie's new YouTube channel features actual client Akashic and intuitive readings recorded to video, with the videos featuring information on galactic history and extraterrestrial star races, along with real-life advice and direction for starseeds and lightworkers trying to navigate their way within this incarnation experience we call planet Earth. Her website is debbiesolaris.com, and she joins me this week to share her story, her gifts, and her message. Debbie, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and share a little bit about my story and experiences with all your listeners.
Debbie, thank you so much for joining us. Your path prior to 2012 was grounded in science. Please share with our listeners your early path and your life before 2012.
Well, it's probably not a whole lot to say, but I had a very ordinary upbringing. I was, as I was mentioning to you before this radio show, I was brought up as a military brat. We traveled all around the world. You know, my father was in the Army, and we spent quite a bit of time in Europe and, Australia, other parts of the world as well. And so I guess I got kind of an education about maybe kind of more in a different way, an expansive education about different cultures or different, different types of history and things like that, just through our frequent travels. But as far as myself, I really didn't have any interest in any extraterrestrial or paranormal, or maybe a mild interest in astrology, but not really deep interest in spirituality at all until my awakening experience in 2012.
And please share with our listeners what your career was prior to that point.
I'm actually was a Navy veteran, or I am still a Navy veteran. I used to be in the Navy. I was in the Navy for 6 years, served as a hospital corpsman. Then when I returned to civilian life, I was an environmental health specialist for quite a few years. Just recently retired from that career last year. So it took a while, I think, to process out of the 3D matrix work. But yeah, I was just involved with science for quite a few years.
Now, prior to the events of 2012, did you have a sense or feeling that things were about to change?
Yeah, probably. There was a lot going on in our planet, and I had a conscious awareness. My partner, Terry, he's very much into the paranormal, and he was way into ufology even before I was. And he was always reading UFO magazine and other paranormal publications, and which I thought was really weird when we were first dating, but because he seemed like such a straight-laced guy otherwise. But he was the one that I think kind of got me introduced to the whole genre, and then I started reading the articles, and it was starting to expand my consciousness a little bit. Like, I think I was still skeptical, but I didn't, I was starting to wonder, I wonder if this is really true. There's so many accounts, of people having extraterrestrial experiences. It was just kind of starting to make me wonder a little bit. So yeah, I guess maybe to answer your question, yes, I did. So it was kind of like I went through this process of I think just slowly becoming more and more aware, and my mind being a little bit more open to the possibilities. Okay, now what happened in 2012 that changed your life? That is a great question. 2012, I think, was a pivotal year for a lot of us, particularly in the United States. There was quite a bit of, I think, changes going on I think on various levels. There was definitely a lot of political changes. There was economic changes, changes to our environment. Then everybody was talking about the Mayan calendar ending, and that in December 2012, that it was the end of an era, and so I was kind of wondering about all this. I was just kind of wondering. I tended to be a worry wart. I was always kind of worried about things, and that was my old personality. So I guess one night I was. This was probably in May 2012. I sent out this really earnest prayer out to the universe, and I didn't really care who received it. But I was sending it out specifically to the higher dimensional beings. And basically I was just asking for assistance with planet Earth, that, we were struggling here, and that, a lot of people were suffering, and animals were suffering, and the environment was suffering. And, there's a lot of uncertainty in our reality here on planet Earth, and we needed assistance. We needed some higher guidance or help. And this was one of those earnest prayers that I spent like the whole night praying. I had kind of the sleepless night, and I was really, I think my intentions were really good. I think I just really genuinely wanted assistance for our planet. And so I sent out this prayer, and of course, the next day, nothing happened, and 2 weeks had gone by, didn't really get any indication that, there was any receptivity on my prayer. So I just kind of went along with my daily life. And then in June, I think it was early June, I had a minor back surgery. I think it was a laser surgery, and I just, very quick recovery while I was at home. And I went to bed one night, and I fell asleep. And I found when I came to consciousness, I was in this different reality. And I knew it wasn't a dream. Most dreams are really kind of vague. Even the more lucid dreams, there's kind of a vagueness or kind of a hazy quality to dreams. This was very crystal clear. And I noticed that everything in this new reality was, the details were really sharp, the colors were more brilliant. I remember everything like even now, like it happened yesterday, because it was that clear. And so I knew I was in a different reality or a different dimension. And as I was, wandering around this, space that I was in, I realized I was on board an extraterrestrial starcraft. It was very, very clear to me. It didn't look quite like Star Wars or Star Trek. I think sometimes, sci-fi movies have a tendency to show extraterrestrial craft as being kind of metallic. This wasn't metallic at all. It was very organic, actually. It seemed to be made of light, but you could tell it was a starcraft. And even the ship itself seemed like a sentient being, because it was kind of directing me towards this space. So I just kind of followed along, and then I found myself in some sort of a large room, and there was extraterrestrial beings in this room. And I knew they were extraterrestrial. They didn't look like anything you would find on planet Earth. They had they weren't super tall. They were maybe about my height. Maybe I'm not a tall person. I'm only 5 foot. So they were maybe about my height, maybe even a little shorter. And they had larger heads, but they didn't quite look like gray aliens, like the aliens that are so popularized in ufology. These beings looked a little bit more refined. They had more refined features. They had larger eyes, but their eyes had pupils and irises, and their auras were so big that I had a hard time looking at them directly. I had to kind of glance at them from my periphery to see them. That's how bright their auras were. But they were definitely extraterrestrial.
And where were they from?
I asked them that. It was funny because I was formulating questions in my head, and I wasn't afraid of them. It was something about them that seemed friendly, or they just kind of emitted this love frequency. So I wasn't afraid of them at all. So I was kind of formulating that question in my head, and they answered me before I could even finish the question in my head. So obviously we were using telepathy, but they told me they were Arcturians and they were from Arcturus. And then they had this hologram in the room, or this holographic thing that they were showing me, illustrating where Arcturus was located, what constellation it was in, it's in the Bodas constellation. And they were kind of illustrating this as they were telepathically communicating with me. So yeah, they told me they were Arcturians.
And you said there was a sense of warmth, perhaps even love. Did it sound like my experience, familial to you, like they were family?
Yeah, I kind of had that feeling that they seemed familiar. And at the time, I didn't realize they were family, but there was just this familiarity with, I guess, their presence. And I did ask them, why me? Why do you have me here? And they eventually did tell me that they were family. And I was kind of shocked. I was like, there's no way I could be related to these beings. They were magnificent, and, I'm just a lowly human. And they kind of explained like the whole connection, that I had volunteered to be on Earth, and that I was going to go through this period of forgetfulness in order to experience the Earth experience. And then they also told me that there was a genetic connection, because they used to have, I guess, colonies on planet Earth a long, long time ago. And I guess my family is the product of, some of those colonies that they had. I think they did their own experiments back in the day. So. And
how did this experience change your life?
At first, it was just a weird experience, and I woke up the next day, and there was a lot more that happened. When I was on board the ship, they showed me around the ship. I had interactions with other extraterrestrial beings, particularly some Pleiadians and Syrians, and it seemed like I was on the ship for a while. It seemed like, because I was asking them a lot of questions, and they were using the hologram to answer my questions. So this was, I think, a very intense experience. And so the next day I woke up and I knew that I had some sort of life-changing experience because I felt different. I don't know how to describe it, but it seemed like nothing was ever going to be the same, after experiencing that. And I did have a second experience on board the ship in December 2012. So it was actually 2 visits. That one wasn't quite as intense, but, I was on board the ship and I had interactions with Pleiadian beings when I was back on the ship. But afterwards, I did notice that my extrasensory perception seemed to have significantly expanded. I mean, to the point where, I all of a sudden, I was able to pick up on information I never even knew before. And I was having massive downloads of information about extraterrestrial beings, their cultures, their history. I knew all the different star systems. I never even took a class in astronomy, and I knew all the different star systems. And I started having downloads of galactic history, galactic wars. And I was starting to question, wow, is this stuff real? Am I just making this up? And so I started doing massive research, and I was realizing, there's other people out there that are talking about some of this stuff, maybe not quite to the degree that, I was experiencing it, but so it kind of confirmed that what I was receiving was real. And then I was having some alternate dimensional experiences, like I was doing alternate dimensional travels, and I was seeing UFOs everywhere, all the time. And I started, and sometimes I would see I would travel, and I would be shifting in and out of different dimensions, or I would encounter people and I would see their auras. And that was, I think, the most significant thing was when I was able to pick up information on different people, not even knowing them, but I would, for instance, somebody would ask me, why is my husband fascinated with griffins? And I didn't know this person. I said, because his family crest has a griffin on it. And she was shocked that I said that. So I said, well, let's look it up, and then I got her family name. We looked it up, and sure enough, their family crest had a griffin on it. So it was just weird, kind of off kilter, or random information like that. Or I would encounter somebody and I would know that, they're a Pleiadian starseed. They spent many lifetimes in the Pleiades. And I didn't know how I knew that information. I just knew it. Or I would, see UFOs and I would know, yes, that's a UFO from Arcturus, or this is a UFO from the Pleiades. Somehow I was able to recognize the type of UFOs and, what star systems they were associated with. So that's just kind of information that you just don't learn, it's just I don't know. I kind of laugh sometimes because it was just so different than how I was before, where I had absolutely no gifts, no concept of anything. And all of a sudden I just knew all this information.
Did they give you a sense of mission?
Yes. They told me that I was supposed to be a bridge between, the 3D reality and the 5D reality, that I was supposed to be the one to bring galactic information to, I guess, the masses. and the way they described it is they told me that I came from at least my soul heritage, that I came from a long line of Arcturian ambassadors, scientists, and historians. So my understanding was that, I always, I was gravitated towards science because, that was my family, I guess, family mission, but also that, there was a historical aspect to it too. So there was I was supposed to remind humanity of our true galactic history.
My guest is Debbie Solaris. Debbie, please tell our listeners where they can find out more about you and this amazing work.
Yes, they can find me on DebbieSolaris.com. So that's DebbieSolaris.com. I'm also on YouTube and Instagram, so you can find me there as well. As far as my website, there is a big section on my website on galactic history. It's several sections. So there's several sections within a section. So there's galactic history on each major star system in our galaxy. And there's a wealth of information on there. It took us several months, myself and my web developer at the time, to create that section. And so I invite people to visit it. There's a lot of beautiful illustrations of these different star races, as well as, I think, some pretty factual information about galactic history that I think will be really fascinating for people. My YouTube channel features actual readings, galactic Akashic readings I've done for different clients. That's kind of been the format for a while. I do hope to introduce some other types of formats to my channel. But if you want to have an idea of, what is it like to have a galactic Akashic reading, I do encourage my clients or your listeners or anybody to check out the YouTube channel as well.
And we'll be back with more of Debbie Solaris after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
Free your mind with OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
A social distancing tip.
Keeping your distance from others is important in slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are some fun things to do alone. Read a book, take a walk, unpack your suitcase from that trip you took last September, paint a self-portrait, catch up on a TV series, do a puzzle. Remember, we should all stay home to lower the risk for everyone. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Back on Vox Novus, my guest this week, Debbie Solaris, we're talking about her experiences, contact with ETs, and how it changed her life. So how did you start your journey accessing galactic history and information on the different star races within the Akashic records?
That's also one of those stories that kind of built from one thing to another. I guess back in 2012, or after I had those experiences, I started taking as many spiritual classes as I could. I mean, I was kind of obsessive about it. And it was on anything. It wasn't, particularly geared towards ET or information or anything like that. It was anything from Native American shamanism to crystal healing, to harmonic, astronomy. Okay, so I took it all, So, in that phase of my life, just felt like I was building on information, or maybe reminding myself of spiritual information that I needed to know later. But I didn't realize why at the time I was taking these classes. I just knew that I needed to build on my spiritual background. So I went on this spiritual fast track where, I was growing spiritually by leaps and bounds. And eventually, my partner and I, we did move to Castle Rock, which is just south of Denver. I used to live in Colorado Springs, which is also an Air Force town, since you were mentioning the Air Force. So when I moved to Castle Rock, there was a much more variety of spiritual offerings. So I started taking classes, and then I eventually started taking classes in Akashic Records readings because my spiritual teachers were always telling me that I was accessing the Akashic Records, and I didn't even realize it. I didn't even know what the Akashic Records were. So I thought, well, if I'm accessing information, I might as well take the classes. So there was a 3-series class that I took. I started, I think, doing Akashic readings semi-professionally after taking the first level, but I took all 3 levels. So I am a certified Akashic Records reader. And I just started, I guess, casually offering readings. And at first it was kind of more like a hobby. But I guess because people really felt very connected with the readings that I did, my popularity grew and grew. Then in 2015, I started getting a little bit more public with my story. I was invited to present my story at a UFO panel in Denver with a group called Paranormal Talks. And then I was invited back to compare my story with somebody that had an NDE, which is a near-death experience. Then I was invited to teach a class about extraterrestrial races for Boulder EXO, which is an extraterrestrial group based out of Boulder, Colorado. And I actually taught the class in the University of Colorado in Boulder. So that was pretty impressive. So it seemed like it just kind of built up from there. And so then I was starting to offer these classes. This is, of course, pre-COVID, but I was starting to offer these classes in person throughout the Front Range of Colorado. Just as I was starting to, wanting to branch out into more online work, I came down with breast cancer. So I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I went through this 3 or 4 year period where I was dealing with one illness after another. And then my guides at the time told me that if I continued to do my 3D job, that I was going to continue to get sick. So I had to leave my job. So last year in 2019, I made a choice that I was going to devote the rest of my life to my spiritual work and leave behind any semblance of 3D work. So I retired from the agency that I worked for and have been doing this work ever since. So I'm still kind of growing and evolving along my journey, just like everybody else is.
What was your reaction when they gave you that admonition to do that, to leave the 3D job and move on to the spiritual work? What was your initial response to that information?
I resisted it, honestly, because I was conditioned to believe that, you're supposed to work. My parents, taught me to have like this really strong work ethic, and you're supposed to have this regular job, and you're supposed to be investing into your retirement. And so I was a bit resistant. And my partner, especially, he was really resistant. I mean, he was worried because, he just retired, and he didn't want both of us retiring at the same time, because he thought that would have an impact on our household budget, our household income. And so there was this, I think, resistance initially because I had invested a lot of years into the job that I had, and invested into the retirement pension. and I wanted to get my full retirement. So the more I resisted, the sicker I was getting. It was kind of weird how that, so it's like as soon as my breast cancer went in remission, I was diagnosed with hyperparathyroidism, which required me to travel across the country to get specialized surgery for that. And then I was diagnosed with a number of other comorbidities, that was impacting my health. And finally, I just kind of gave up and I said, okay, guides, okay, I got the message, and so I worked it out to where I could retire early, but still receive my full pension, because I felt like, if I'm going to leave, I'm going to get everything that's coming to me, that's, I'm entitled to. And my life's been great ever since. And all the worries about finances were unfounded. That's something I always I always try to impart with my clients that, if your higher guidance is telling you to do something, don't resist it like I did, because it's just going to make the process a lot more difficult. Just kind of flow with it, take the risk, just say, you know what, I'm just going to leave it to the universe. And sure enough, I think as far as financially, I'm actually way better off now than I was when I was working, 40 plus hours a week. So the universe does conspire to support us when we become aligned with our mission.
Absolutely. How's your health today?
It's actually really great.
Wonderful.
I had surgery earlier this year. It was kind of the last of the process. I spend a lot of time actually on self-care. I completely radically changed my diet. I eat mostly plant-based now, and I do exercise. I pay attention to how much sleep I get per night. I meditate. My lifestyle has changed dramatically just in the last couple of years, and it has paid off. One
of the things that I've noticed among our fellow seekers and people on the similar paths is that we're so often giving so much to others, but not giving ourselves that same loving and compassionate attention.
And that was true of me too. I was spending so much time trying to build my Akashic practice and work 40 hours a week that, I ran my health into the ground. So when my guides told me you have to leave, I just finally told my partner, I'm leaving, I'm leaving the job. It's not even up for discussion anymore. And some of that was his own fears too. But one of the things I always tell my clients is, especially when we're doing Akashic clearings, I also do Akashic clearings in addition to Akashic readings, and I'll explain what that is in a moment. But I always tell my clients during Akashic reading or clearings is that a lot of us as practitioners, we're always taking care of everybody else. We always put everybody else first. And we really need to be putting ourselves first, because, if we're taking care of our own energy, then we have that much more to give to others. Absolutely. Absolutely. So go ahead and explain the Akashic clearing and the Akashic reading. Okay, great. The Akashic readings I do have a very galactic perspective. So I think that's what kind of makes my readings stand out, maybe from, other galactic or Akashic type readings. But, and I think there's a few more people that are starting to delve into the galactic records. But with my Akashic readings, I go way, way back. So I don't just stop at planet Earth, or I don't just stop at, the last, off-world life that the person had. I go way back, as far back as I can, to the very beginning, to where sometimes even where that soul has first separated from source and where they originated from. Most of us, I think, here on planet Earth did originate from this galaxy. So We all came from soul groups. So the majority of us, there's some exceptions, but the majority of us have come from, soul groups that are, I think, that were developed here in the Milky Way. So what the purpose of the Akashic reading is to give kind of a 180-degree view of that person's soul journey. So who were they? Where did they come from? What's their specialty? What kind of work did they do in previous off-world lives? What brought them to planet Earth? Why did they come to planet Earth? What was their mission? What's their life purpose? So all these questions are being answered during the Akashic reading. Now, with the Akashic clearing, that's a different type of reading. I do get quite a few clients that feel stuck, or they feel like maybe they're trying to clear an old ancestral program, or maybe they're trying to clear some old blockages from previous lifetimes. And so what we do is we kind of look at their auric field, their chakras. We go into soul programs, master programs, and then we'll do an invocation to help set new intentions in their Akashic records. So a lot of people sometimes will ask me, well, can you change the records? And to a certain extent, yes and no. So it's kind of a two-part deal where I don't think you can change the records in the sense of what happened in the past, but you can certainly shift the records to set new intentions for yourself. So if you set the intention of, I'd like to have better health, and you do this within the records, you will start receiving guidance, from your guides, or from the Akashic guides, or from, angelic beings, so maybe they'll help guide you to ways that you can improve your health. If somebody wants to disconnect themselves from any lower vibrational timelines, matrices, dimensions, and realms, they can certainly do that, because that's no longer going to be a part of their reality. They choose not to have it. We're all free will beings, so we and one of the things I always try to impart to my clients is that we have the choice to be able to create whatever reality we want to create for ourselves. So that's the purpose of the Akashic clearing.
And in that process, is there an actual reconfiguration of the DNA?
I think on some levels, yes, because I do what's called the self-sovereignty invocation, and that's realigning that person with their original divine template. So in a way, yes, I would say that's definitely true.
And how does this information change a person's life?
I think it changes their lives because it reminds them of their true magnificence. So it has so I think when you get reconnected to who you truly are and where you've been and who you've been aligned with, throughout your various, past lives or present lives or multidimensional lives, I think that has a sense of empowering somebody. They're no longer just this ordinary human. They become a galactic citizen. And when they realize that for themselves, it gives them, I think, the momentum to make necessary changes within their lives. And it might be even very subtle. It might not even be conscious, but they start realizing that, hey, I've always wanted to be, this for an example, for instance, they might think, I always want to be a spiritual practitioner, but I have all these obligations, but then they find ways to resolve those obligations so that they can make necessary changes in their lives to create the kind of life that they want for themselves.
And that they deserve, because worth is the big issue here, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it is. I think here on planet Earth, I don't know why. I guess I know why our culture, there's various levels of that answers to that, but I think a lot of us have been brought up with very negative reinforcement. When we were kids. Okay, there's some exceptions to that, but I would say on the general consensus. Yeah, it's, we were brought up with very negative reinforcement, either through our parents or through government or through religion or school. And so I think we forget that, we're the masters of our own destiny, that we're able to create, whatever reality we want to create for ourselves. And so, so then when we get introduced to, great teachers that remind us, like Abraham Hicks and Louise Hay, and I can name a dozen people that, kind of were in the forefront of, expanding consciousness. It's like, oh, you mean I don't have to settle for this, or this ordinary life? I can create something more for myself. And yeah, so I would say, yes, I think that's a big hurdle that a lot of us have to overcome,
Absolutely.
in our own spiritual growth.
And we'll be back with more of Debbie Solaris after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
A social distancing tip.
Keeping your distance from others is important in slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are some fun things to do alone. Read a book, take a walk, unpack your suitcase from that trip you took last September, paint a self-portrait, catch up on a TV series, do a puzzle. Remember, we should all stay home to lower the risk for everyone. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Bill Maher. I can find humor in almost anything, but one thing I never laugh about is cruelty to animals. If you don't get the joke either, write People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, 501 Front Street, Norfolk, Virginia, 23510.
Back on Vox Novus with my guest, Debbie Solaris. Debbie, what are some of the common questions that people ask you when getting a Galactic Akashic reading?
Oh, yeah, the questions. I get very, I get some questions that are, I would say they're pretty common. The one I get the most is probably, what's my star lineage? That's probably the most. That's probably the reason most people go to me for a reading, because they're curious about their star origins or their star lineage. The second question I get the most of is, what's my life purpose? So I think a lot of us get very distracted by, our own, day-to-day obligations, or, our work, our jobs, our families. And so we lose sight of, why am I even here on this planet? Why did I choose to be here? So part of the process when I do, an Akashic Records reading is to kind of help that person understand who they are and what kind of work they did in the past. What's their particular galactic gifts? And usually from there, we can kind of figure out what their life purpose is. And I always kind of refer to Dolores Cannon and her 3 Waves of Volunteers. I'm a big fan of Dolores Cannon. I kind of see her as my predecessor in some ways, but But a lot of times I think it depends on when we were born, like what our mission or our overall mission is. So for instance, you and I were both, first wave volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
So, we tend to be way showers and spiritual guides and teachers, so that's our predominant energy. So we come in with more of a blue ray kind of energy. So we're more blue rays. The folks that were born in the 70s and 80s, those folks are usually the true indigo childs, the children, so they come in with a more, I would say, stronger energy or more rebellious energy. So these are system busters. And then we have the new kids, so these are the kids that are born in the 90s and the 2000s. These are what we can classify as crystal or rainbow children. These folks are coming in to be system builders. So they have usually they have more technological abilities. Not always, but that's usually what I see with third wave volunteers. But anyway, just kind of understanding, and I do use some numerology when I do these Akashic readings, or I use a lot of astrology sometimes to kind of understand who this person is, what their particular skill sets are and what they came here to do. So, yeah, those would be the two major questions. I also get a lot of questions about twin flames. People seem to be fascinated by that whole phenomena of twin flames. I get questions about soul contracts a lot. So why do I have connections with certain people in my life? Do we have a soul contract? Are they part of my soul family? That sort of thing. So, so those would be the major questions.
Do the different star races have different characteristics that people are here to employ?
Absolutely. I would say 100% yes. I think you'll see some similarities amongst some of these star races, but for the most part, there's some very distinct differences. To give you an example, there's a difference between Pleiadians and Syrians. Okay, Pleiadian energy is more has a lot more levity to it. It's a brighter energy. So when I encounter or work with a client that is predominantly Pleiadian, when I look at their auric field, it's really bright. And there's a reason why they're called the family of light. And Pleiadians tend to be, I think it depends on which star system they're in the Pleiades are associated with, but they tend to be either really technical or they tend to be kind of spiritual generalists. They're very well suited to do a variety of different spiritual work. But yeah, the energy is more balanced. It's calmer energy. There's a lightness to it. When I encounter somebody that's Syrian, that's predominantly Syrian, there's a more serious aspect to their frequency. They're more down to earth. They're practical. I do get a lot of people that are doctors and nurses that have Syrian heritage. For some reason, Syrian starseeds tend to gravitate towards that type of work because they're very serious about being of service to others. But I also get a fair amount of people that are Syrians that are good in business. They like running their own businesses, or they do very well in corporate structures. They don't stay in corporate structures. I think they work for a few years and then they kind of get tired of it. Even with the medical thing, I do see a lot of Syrian starseeds that gravitate towards. But Syrians tend to be more practical. Okay, so they tend to be able to navigate the physical reality a little bit more successfully. Pleiadians, on the other hand, I think they're more kind of follow your bliss kind of people. So they tend to, I think, enjoy working for themselves or being freelancers more than than working within a structured type of environment. So that's just an example. But you also see this with, if you're having a reading with me, a lot of times I'll describe certain personality types of certain star races. And a lot of times a client will say, wow, how did you know that about me? I didn't even recognize that within myself. And so I think in this way, each of these different star races are coming in to offer a particular set of gifts to help with the evolution of this planet. And so you'll see this over and over again when you're doing Akashic readings for folks, that they tend to have certain skill sets that are aligned with the star system that they're from.
How does knowing about galactic history and the different star races help us here on Earth during today's turbulent times?
That's a wonderful question, and it's I think there's varying levels to the answer of that question, but I think as we become more galactically aware humans, where we become more conscious, we have to move beyond the idea of, we're the only intelligent life in the universe. I think that's an old, outmoded concept that needs to change. And I think just the understanding that we're not alone, that, we're connected with other star races who are genetically and spiritually connected to us, I think gives us a compass of sorts, or a navigation tool to navigate through our own lives. And I know that sounds like a really big concept, but it really isn't. So just, knowing that, hey, I come from Pleiadian lineage. These are my skill sets. This is, what I came here to do. I think helps us to create or to navigate ourselves through our lives in a way that's more meaningful for us, instead of just, kind of taking stabs in the dark.
Is there any message or a message of hope that you can offer us at this time?
Absolutely. Just that we're not alone. I think both Victor and I have experienced this again and again, through our various multidimensional experiences. But and also that the Galactics know what's happening here on Earth. They're very aware of what's happening here. They're not going to save us. Okay, that's not their purpose, but they're certainly here to help guide us. And I do have this great, strong feeling that good will prevail. It's just ever since I became awakened, when the Arcturians told me that this is all an illusion, the third dimension, and that that they know what's happening and things are under control more than we realize. Then I think we just need to kind of trust in our higher guidance and be able to navigate through all these turbulent times with the understanding that, and I think a lot of that has to do with ourselves too, so the understanding of, hey, I want to create this new reality. If we can create it for ourselves, then that has an exponential effect on the people in our inner circle. And, I always tell my clients that each of us as higher dimensional, light workers have this exponential effect on the vibration of a 50-mile radius around us. So that's why you see so many star seeds kind of dispersed out, rather than clustered in one area. But if, so if we're able to create positive changes within ourselves and then within our lives and our relationships, then that can't help but have an exponential effect on, even people that we don't know and people that are in our periphery. Absolutely. My guest, Debbie Solaris. Debbie, one more time, please tell our listeners where they can find out more about you and your amazing work. Oh, thank you so much. I just want to give a little bit of a caveat that I'm not taking appointments right now, only because I am booked out until like the middle of next year. So I had to shut down my calendar for a while. But if they want to, check out I will be opening up the calendar again, probably early next year. So if you're interested in Akashic reading for yourself, please visit my website at DebbieSolaris.com. So that's DebbieSolaris. And go to my booking page, and you can sign up to be notified when I'll be taking appointments again.
And your YouTube channel.
And the YouTube channel, just do a search on Debbie Solaris, and you'll find me right away. So,
wonderful. Debbie, thank you so much for sharing all of your experiences and this amazing work that you do with our listeners. And thank you for being here at this time when we need people like us so desperately.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing too, Victor. It's you have such an outreach, and I'm very pleased and honored to be part of that. So thank you for having me on the show.
And thank you for joining us on Vox Novus. I'm Victor, the Voice Fuhrman. Have a wonderful week.